I cannot stress enough how much this is not just about electing Democrats and then thinking that they're going to do the right thing.
Right.
Don't trust our party without holding us accountable. Don't trust any elected official, including myself, without holding us accountable. You know, that is the thing that is so important. And this is not just about electing a Democratic ticket and walking away, because at the end of the day, Congress, both parties, are still largely governed and deeply influenced by private interests. And when we walk away, they truly take over. And so we cannot walk away. Our job is to elect the people that we are going to give a hard time for the next 4 years. That's our job. And so our job is to continue pushing, because we already know, we've already seen from this discussion on fracking how this could go if we walk away. We cannot walk away from this discussion, because while I understand the political calculation here, I understand that fracking is a more sensitive issue with a certain specific swing electorate in certain electoral college swing states. At the end of the day, the science is clear, and fracking produces methane, which is 64 times more powerful at capturing heat in our atmosphere than CO2. And so the science is clear on this issue. The geopolitics is clear on this issue. People say, oh, we need this for energy security. First of all, you know what's more energy secure than anything else? Renewable energy, so that we're not constantly trying to drill our own supply. The second thing that's really important for us to discuss here is that we have to also affirmatively see the needs of people who are concerned about their jobs. And we can actually legislate with those folks as partners, not as enemies. And that is how we can come to a conclusion on this issue.
Yeah. Everybody's got to be at the table. You know, Annie Leonard, who's the director of Greenpeace US, gave a wonderful metaphor for what happened during the Obama years. You know, he was running for office, and the campaign really built a movement. And once he was elected, we all sat back and it became a movie. Oh, look what he's doing now. I wonder what he's going to do. Oh, how's this going to end up? Can't let that happen again. It ain't no movie.
It's not. And you know, I think it's so important. Yes, we are all rallying in order to make sure that we kick Trump out of office, but we need a very strong activist wing. It's truly going to be up to everyday people that engage in advocacy and in their government directly, whether it's through calling their elected officials, protest, and other creative ways. But our future is in the hands of everyday people when it comes to the climate crisis, because it needs to continue to be a losing issue, and fossil fuels need to continue to become a losing issue for more and more people in a greater and greater way. And, you know, it's not about like us versus an enemy, but, you know, and because we do need to, the whole point of having a justice-centered approach is that we don't want to leave any communities behind. We want to develop a plan for those folks, you know, and the irony of it is that when coal workers who were being treated poorly by coal companies, by the way, were being denied their pensions after the Republican Party issued bailout after bailout for coal, those coal companies, did they pay their workers with that bailout? No. Were they paying their pensions with that bailout? No. We needed another fight. And so when those Kentucky coal workers were trying to get their pensions, trying to get people to fight for their pensions, you know whose office they came to? Mine. They didn't go to Mitch McConnell's office, because Mitch McConnell was turning his back on them. They came to Democrats. They came to people who cared about workers, who put worker-centered policy first. And that is why this is not about being anti-fossil fuel worker. In fact, this is about centering the needs and the concerns of fossil fuel workers and their families, so that we can make this transition together without being reliant on their bosses and the industries and the executives that pay themselves anyway.
The oil and the gas are the stranded assets that remain in the ground. The workers must never be the stranded assets. Yeah. So you and I have both experienced being vilified, including by presidents. And so I'm going to ask you a question that I get asked a lot. How do you handle it?
Well, it's not easy, I think, is the first thing to communicate, is that, the reason that these attacks happen, whether they're on journalists, whether they are on progressive politicians, whether they're on women, people of color, etc., is to exhaust us. It is to wear us down. Because we don't necessarily have the traditional institutional resources that a lot of people that were perhaps born into, aristocratic families have. And so the whole point is to wear us down. And so, the way that I try to endure, honestly, the thing that really helps me is the grassroots support that we have. If I felt like what we were fighting for was not politically popular, was not supported by everyday people, that people were not organizing on the ground to support this work, not just in the realm of electoral politics, but really just in terms of building power in their own communities, it would be really hard to continue. Exactly. But the power of grassroots movements has really made me feel like I am being part of something that's bigger than myself. And that feeling is what helps me keep going.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel too. I was always part of a movement. I was never by myself. And so that puts starch in your spine and hope in your gut. Did you ever imagine 10 years ago that you would run for office? And what do you think? What advice do you have for people considering running for office?
Yeah, I absolutely did not think that that I would be running for office for a lot of reasons. One is that I felt 10 years ago that there was no way that I could run and win in politics just being myself, being 100% just authentic, and being able to run with the views that I have, and also just not trying to be this consultant, focus grouped, person that has to calculate every word and put on this image of what we think is acceptable. And I knew that I could never do that. I knew that I could not live with myself doing that. And so I had felt like that's all that politics, like that was a lot of the politicians that I had seen growing up. Yeah. That, and also I come from a working class family. My family was low income, middle class, and oscillated growing up. And I wasn't born into a family with any connections. I didn't have any special connections, and I didn't feel like schmoozing my way into a social set that I just didn't relate to. And so I never, ever, ever thought that politics was a place for me. And I actually feel like I relate a lot to your story, Jane, when you talked about kind of the despair that you felt before getting involved in activism work. And that I was one of those people that had written off our entire political system. And I said, neither party works for us. Neither party cares about communities like mine or people like me. And there's no point. And what I found was that when I submitted myself to that kind of cynical viewpoint, I was really depressed. I felt very powerless. I felt like I was just watching my world decline and that there was nothing I could do about it. But when I decided to say, you know what, whether I win or whether I lose, I'm going to give it a shot. And even if I go down, I'm going to go down fighting. That gave me purpose in my life. And that's when I went to Standing Rock, and that's when I engaged in activism, and that's when I supported our Black brothers and sisters in the movement for Black lives. And I felt like my life had a greater purpose than just buying stuff and working a low wage job that people didn't respect. I think that what's so important about activism is that it's not just that it doesn't have to be hard or grueling. It could be a source of joy and purpose in our life.
Yes. Yes.